Hey guys! Hi guys, it's a celebration! I know if you're not used to church, we do loud in this church. So you're allowed to scream, you're allowed to shout, you're allowed to say amen. Preach it, sister. Amen. All right, so before we go on, I'm just so excited because, when we celebrate the number 3, we're thinking, we're celebrating 3 years of doing this, but what we're really celebrating are the lives of people. Today, we celebrate your life. We celebrate the fact that God has done something or begun to do something or about to do something so significant. The fact that you are all here, have come from different backgrounds, different stories. You're here to tell of what God has done in your life. And so I thought it'd be really cool if we get 3 people that have 3 different journeys just up here with me, for like about 10 minutes. I'm just going to ask them a few questions so you can get to know our people better, but also that God works differently. God meets us where we're at. So it doesn't matter what our past is, where we come from, where we're going, God will meet you where you're at. So we're going to have, if I can get Himani, Sani, and Gaurav up here with me. Please welcome them. Himani and Sani, want to sit there? You can take that mic and sit there. Sit there. Himani, you want to take that mic? Hey guys.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi.
Don't they look amazing? Look at these people. I just want to say, Ryan and I have had the privilege of watching these people come in and God just mess them up in a good way. He takes what we have, and if we allow Him, He'll do His thing. And I've seen God meet them, each of them, where they're at. And so I'm just going to let them just say hello, introduce themselves, and just going to throw a few questions. Feel free. Guys, please encourage them. This is the first time. Well, Gaurav's been here up there. Just, Rochelle, you can do a bit of your woos from the back. So Gaurav, that's everyone say hi to Himani, Sani.
Hi.
That's Sani. Everyone say hi, Sani.
Hello.
And this is Gaurav. Everybody say awesome.
How are you?
So, I want to start with you, Gaurav. Why don't you just give us a little bit of your background and what brought you to C3 and what God's begun to do in your heart? Has there been moments when, in the past where you've not fully comprehended what church means or what church could look like? And what has God done in your journey of being here with us?
Yeah, that's a long question. But I think I'll start with the fact that, let me start with who I am to some degree. So I spent first 17 years of my life dreaming about machines and wheels and steering wheels. The next 15 actually driving some of the biggest ones. I sought some aspects of open air freedom and adventure, and I think I found them at the sea. So I sailed as captain, and I've been here for 2 years now. But when I was at sea, while at sea, I think if I were to draw a parallel of where C3 comes into my life journey, a story. It's to start with, it would be this movie actually that I saw called Into the Wild. Has anyone seen the movie Into the Wild? Yeah. You have? Okay. For those who haven't, but it's just can I give a snippet on the movie? Yeah. So it's about this guy Christopher McCandless, and it's a true story, and he goes out to, he's fed up with society as a whole, and he wants to go out in the Alaskan wilderness, and he wants to explore get away from all the judgment and control in society overall, and seek, forget love, fame, fortune, faith, or even just all of that materialistic stuff, and search for truth. And he goes out into the wilderness, and he finds that beauty, that happiness, and he lives off the land for about, goes in the winter in the Alaskan desert, and then lives off the land for a good 4 months, and he reaches this point of self-actualization that he's in the midst of this amazing creation, but at the end of it, it doesn't give him real happiness. he says, but he wants to now go back to sharing and back to community. And he finds that the river that he crossed while coming in the winter has now melted, and it's become violent, and the current is too strong. And when he goes back, he can't cross the river anymore. So he gets stuck on this side of the desert. And he writes these journals over there, and one of the key things that really struck at me and was that happiness is not real until it is shared. And that was his one line that really struck a chord with me. And I was at sea and having the best time of my life. I was happy, and I think that's when God started speaking to me through that. It's not real if you don't share your happiness. Wow. So you've got to come back into community, back into where most people live, and that's land. So I decided to make that transition. Luckily, I was able to cross that river and come back here. And I think God fit C3 in this tapestry very beautifully, because I found a lot of genuine people who were seeking after the truth, imperfect people, but at the same time, real. And I think these are people that I can have as friends outside church. But I think what you, Rachel and Ryan, made happen is that you allow for that imperfection, you allow for that time of growth, and you allow for people to seek the truth on their own. And I think it's not something that you push through, and I think when you seek after truth, you'll find it. And I think community has helped me do that, and my happiness now is in some ways real, because I'm sharing it. Yeah.
Wow. I think you should speak next Sunday. You're going to take over our job, Gaurav. But that is amazing. I think that is a chord that we as C3, as a community, always want to bring home, that we're not just people that come together on a Sunday and then forget each other. We're people that struggle together. We're people that discover together. We're people that live together in discovering who God is and who we are. And I think trying to do it on your own, like Gaurav said, is, you can only do it up to a point, because we're made in the image of God, and because we're made in the image of God, we have to share, because God gave his best and his first. So thanks, Gaurav, for that. Sani, I just want to ask you, I know your story is different to Gaurav, and it's an incredible story about how, God meets you where you're at. Can you share with us a little bit of your journey of how that happened?
Yeah, so I'm Sani, and I was born and raised a regular Roman Catholic, which meant that we had the regular daily prayers, half an hour every night on your knees saying the prayers, and Sunday church. And all through my childhood, I knew that you have this gut feeling that there's more to it, but you don't know. I didn't come to that scenario where I met people who would tell me or anything. And this just went on and on. Between my sisters, we would share that there's something more to know. And this went on for a while, and it was about a year ago. So I'm a mom. I've got 2 kids. And about a year ago, I hit a real low point in my life. Everything was really crumbling. On all fronts, it was a very hopeless phase. I felt there's no hope, and I was disturbed, didn't sleep at night. It was a terrible time. And I went to my usual set of friends, and they tried to sort out things in the worldly ways. And then something happened. Through my daughter, another friend got to know as to what's happening at home. And one thing led to the other, and I had a very strong feeling that there was some sort of supernatural intervention in my life. The people who were throwing things at me, things were going wrong on their front, and everything was working in my favor. And at that time, I had a couple of friends from here, from C3, who gave me books. I think one book I read at that point was Joyce Meyer's Battle Belongs to the Lord. And it was all black, and this was one ray of hope for me. So I took it up, I said, I don't know, but I will just go by this book. It says I don't need to fight in my strength. I'll fight in his strength.
Come on.
And so I relaxed. I felt his peace after a few bad weeks. I felt his peace in my heart, and I knew that I wouldn't be the same again. This was 1 year ago. And then I read that line. I think you mentioned that it was
I think Bill Johnson.
Bill Johnson. And it said that the supernatural intervention of God is done to reveal the extravagant heart of God. And I knew that in 1 week, he supernaturally intervened in my life in a way that I have no more doubt about his existence. I have no more doubt about the fact that he is intimately involved in my life. I have no doubt.
You can clap, guys.
I mean, the last 32 years went by with me just going down on my knees when I needed something, going down on my knees just for a moment. And if sometimes my prayers were answered, sometimes not. If they were answered, I would still be in doubt. I'd say that's just a coincidence. And then if they weren't answered, I would say God doesn't even exist. But the last one, life, it's very apt because we're doing identity now. The last 1 year now after I live in a different way.
Wow.
My identity is rooted in my God.
Come on.
I know today that I am not a people pleaser. Before I do anything, I
That's
know,
amazing.
I just think, am I pleasing my God?
Come on.
If I please him, if I'm obedient to him, then it's amazing how much God can do with your one obedient step. He turns things around. He turns things around in your favor. And when I know that it's not happening immediately, I'm not saying that I'm seeing supernatural intervention every other day of my life, but I know there is a reason in the wait. Wow. I know all that very confidently. And in the last 1 year, my identity in Christ, my identity in my God has completely changed. I live life a different way today.
Come on. Thank you, Jesus.
I'm
Yay,
glad for that
God.
intervention because my children are 7 and 5, and this is the age that, the whole character is being molded. And because of that change, today I'm able to give to them also. Wow. Tomorrow, hopefully, they will change somebody else's life. Wow. They will speak about it. So in my small life, I'm glad that, I had that bad 2 weeks, but, I know that how I live my life today.
Wow.
So...
That is amazing. Thank you, Sani. Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you. Hi, Himani.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Himani was sharing with us at a Connect group. That's why Connect groups are so amazing because you really get real. You can be honest. You can be vulnerable. And it was 2 weeks ago, and Himani she's going to share a little bit of a journey, but she's been, praying really for some things to fall into place in her life. And when she started sharing, I'm like, oh my gosh, everybody needs to hear this. So I knew Himani. Today completes 1 year of her being in church, exactly 1 year ago, by the way. Happy anniversary to you.
Thank you.
But I'm just, you inspire me now just by walking closely to you, the humility at what God's doing, the vulnerability and the honesty. So Himani, do you mind sharing a bit of your journey? Because I know you didn't grow up knowing Jesus, or you knew him as something distant. And do you want to just share a little bit about that?
So, hi everybody, good afternoon. I come from a Jain family, a very conservative Jain family. So mom, dad, granny, very spiritual. And I remember I used to spend a lot of time with my granny asking her questions about God. She was a very curious person. And in Jainism, you have a very strict do's and don'ts. If you do this, this is where you go. This is what happens. And I was 8, and I remember telling my granny one night that this God is a little sadistic. Like, I am a human. There are temptations. I'm going to fall, and I'm scared that tomorrow I might go for something wrong and he might punish me. So where's the love? And I remember telling my granny very clearly that the God, I don't know who he is, but the God which I think in my heart is a very kind God. He has to be loving if he made me, if he made you, and we are breathing. Every morning we wake up to a beautiful day filled with opportunities. He has to be a kind God. Like, he is doing so much for us. Why would he punish me? Like, that doesn't make sense. And that's when my journey started. Of course, for me, even like doing idol worship felt really wrong inside my heart, because I remember I used to go to the temple every morning, and I used to, because I was asked to worship. I remember I got this stone as a kid, got this stone, made something, and I was like, Granny, let's start worshipping this now. What difference does it make, right? And why do I have to go to a temple? Like, what if I really need him? I have to go to temple all the time, and it closes at 8 o'clock. I just don't understand what God shuts the door at me at 8 o'clock, go to sleep. But what if all these things happens? And the curiosity started building up, and I started reading Quran. I started reading Gita, and Jesus was a very far-fetched dream, because I went to a Christian school, and even over there was very different. So anyways, there came a point in my life, I went to the States for a certain reason, and I never wanted to come back. And I'm if anybody knows me, I'm a very passionate, very out there, ambitious kind of a person. So things didn't go the way I wanted to, and I got back, and I was battling depression for a year. And again, like, just so many things I had to go in my life through phases. It's not very big, I didn't meet with accident. I had mom and dad. I was blessed with all these things, but of course the hardships which you go through, right? Every time I felt there was something which was giving me so much of strength. And one day I just decided, like, you know what? I'm a 24-year-old girl. I am very smart. I need to get out of this room. I need to make something out of myself. Again, that one year I started making a lot of mistakes, and I came to this church. It was because of Elijah. I met him at Crossroad. I fell in love with this guy. Anyways.
Elijah's my son, for those who don't know.
7 years old, so just a very motherly love. Just saying. So anyways, the thing is, I wasn't blessed with a really good relationship with my mother. And that is something which really haunted me throughout my life. I mean, remember still, this just happened, whatever happened just happened like a month back, but there used to be time at the age of 25, 26, I would see somebody, mother hugging the child, and I would be jealous. Like, I would go to the bathroom and I would cry. Because, shit, sorry.
That's real life.
Sorry. No, but delete that. No, it's no, but I did not. My mother didn't hug me in the night, or she didn't kiss me goodnight. And I'm a very affectionate person, so like if anybody knows, I'm very emotional. I would go out to her and I would hug her, and she would kind of like shove me back. So I used to pray a lot about it. And that's when I kind of, that's when I was so close to my granny, is because I found that love in her. And the more I grew up, me and my mother were at that phase in life where it was a very far-fetched dream to ever have motherly, I always thought I would never know what relationship looks like. So anyways, I got baptized in June. I really was very overwhelmed with knowing Jesus. I started writing a little bit, and writing has always been my passion. But anyways, there are times when you think you know somebody, but you don't, and you do things is because of pleasing people, or you think it seems right. You know what, this shoes fit, like, let me just go for it. It's not a Cinderella story. Jesus is not a Cinderella story. You need to first really know him and make that decision. So anyways, I did it into a rush. I thought everything is okay, I'm perfect, everything is going to be fine now. Everything. It didn't. It was downhill from there. There came a point where I realized that probably even Jesus isn't really real. He didn't do any different in my life. In fact, I'm really going through a very bad time again. And that's when I realized that maybe he is real. Maybe I'm just not accepting him completely. You need to follow him
Come on.
to know him. How can I do things
That's
which are
amazing.
against him and think that he'll do something different because he wants to.
Yeah.
He's just like, I want to, but you keep on, how can I? And I remember it very clearly. It was 24th December 2015. I think I spoke to you and it was like, nothing doing. I'm doing this right. These are the rules. I'm going to follow it. And you know what? I'm not going to expect anything. I would just love him. Let his will be done. And if things happen, happen. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But you know what? I'll put my 1000% faith in him.
Yeah.
A week later, I was watching this movie, Son of God. I would ask everybody to see that movie. It's amazing. And I was sleeping next to my mother. And I had my headphones on and I was crying, weeping because Jesus was getting beaten up. So then I was crying. And my mom was like, are you okay? Like, is it a boy thing? And I was like, relax, it's not a boy thing. Jesus is getting beaten up. So my mom was like, Hermione. And then I remember thinking that maybe this is the time I need to ask her if she knows about him, And this, honestly, like, I and my mom don't have these kind of conversations, We are very like, okay, hi, okay, come at this time, okay, bye. That's about it. And something gave me courage, like, ask her. And I asked my mom that, do you know about Jesus? And she said, you know what, I do. And she said, I'm very proud that you're following him. And I'm going to back you up 100%.
Wow.
And you know what? I'm just so happy that you're doing this. But her request was just don't tell me to follow him. If I have to, I'll do it on my time. And one thing about my mom, she's very spiritual, amazing woman. And that night I slept and I realized like this was a good talk.
Yeah.
Next morning, okay, it was not a very supernatural thing, but
No,
things started changing. And it's
Wow.
very funny because now when I think about it, it's not that my mother changed. My mother was always this amazing, loving woman. She had a different way of showing love. For me, and that's what I've realized, as humans, what we tend to do is we expect, in a certain way, something from some person. Maybe I expect somebody to always hug me when they see me, and that's my way of knowing that they're fond of me, but maybe not. Maybe they'll just do the small gesture, and for them, that would be love.
Yeah.
And that's what Jesus showed me, that you need to put down your expectations is because I will show you what love is. You need to be
Wow.
open to it. You don't need to
Wow.
have that big wall. And then things changed. And my mom and I, we do have a really good relationship.
Come on, guys. That's a big testimony.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
We do hug now. She's learning. She's warming up to it. I force her to. Yeah, I bribe her sometimes, but she does now.
That's
No, I don't.
amazing. Thank you so much for being so honest and vulnerable, all you guys. In just before they go back to their seats, do you guys want to say something to these guys? Just, I don't know, an encouragement or a challenge or just something for the church?
So I think I'll say probably step out of something that you're comfortable in, and allow God to stretch you in ways, and you might have to walk away from something that you absolutely love at this moment, but God wants to give you something that you will be able to love for your next season. And I think God, yes. So I'd say that. Yeah, I think that's what I would say.
That's amazing. You girls?
Yeah, I think just when you start to converse with God, just make sure that you have your moments to converse with God, preferably the first thing in the morning.
Wow.
And just start off saying, I always do this. I say, through the day, Lord, in everything I do, everything I say, your will, Lord, and not my will. And that really helps me through when I come to any point to decide, do I need to do this or do I not do this? So that's one thing I always say, your will, Lord, and not my will. And this whole 1 year journey was possible for me because I had that personal prayer. And second thing, because I read the Word of God every day. And 3, because I have a community of friends like this. So I think all 3 are important in their own way.
That's amazing.
And I've achieved it through this. So try it. Just try it if you haven't known God in that way before.
Wow.
because He's faithful. He's a very faithful God.
Amen. That's
And,
awesome.
He's a very faithful God.
Wow. Thank you so much, Sani. That is amazing, guys. I think when you try to separate any one of those, there is a bit of a dysfunction there, and I think to know who you are, you need to get to know Jesus. You need to get to know the Word of God. You need to have that personal connection. But you can't just know who you are and then not love people, because then you've not really understood God. And I think that is so important. That's why we have each other. Himani, any takeaways?
So even I'm still on my journey, but I can just tell you from what I've been learning. Sometimes when you get to know Jesus, you expect a lot, that nothing bad is going to happen, or you're not going to have hardships, or you're not going to be put on pedestal. But sorry to say, we do fall in this sinful world, right? What I've realized is that there's going to be problems. So if this is your threshold, and if this big is a problem, the threshold can get really weak, and that's when you think it's the end of it, right? What God does it, He won't reduce the problems, because what He's going to do, He's just going to increase your threshold.
Wow.
So even if tomorrow the problem is that big, the threshold is so big because of Him that you're not going to feel anything.
Wow,
And
come
you're gonna
on.
give Him.
Wow, guys.
So I guess that.
Wow. We got 3 preachers in the house. This is amazing. Now we can all go home. Thank you very much.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, guys. But this is amazing. Guys, give them a bigger round of applause. So, I know we've talked a lot, so I'm going to try and be really brief. This series, I've heard from everyone, has been absolutely revolutionary. We're getting feedback. We're getting people that have walked a certain way with so much just condemnation and shame, and this series is just freeing them from that to just, to live like a child, not in childish ways, but to live like a child, and what it means to receive from God and to give. And we talked in the first week. Ryan kicked off the series by talking about righteous identity, and a lot of the time we think that we have to do in order to get, and Jesus just throws a spanner in the wheel, and He says, you know what, if without relationship you can't do any of that. It's through relationship that you get righteousness. And so He touched on that, and He talked about, so often when we feel like we're not in right standing with God, we tend to either strive to get there, or we resign because it's too hard. And the thing you need to remember is that it's none of these that's going to help you. It's just understanding your relationship, walking every day with Jesus, that really counts. And last week I talked about Jesus giving you a new name right from the beginning. In Genesis, I talked about how God's original design, his order, His plan was to make you in His image. So your default was relationship. You were born into relationship. You were born for relationship. Jesus had His Trinity. He had God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, but He made you because He wanted you. And God He always gives you your identity. He always gives you a name before He gives you a command. And so he made Adam and Eve in the image of God, and He made them to think like God mentally, morally, socially, relationally. And then man fell, man got tempted, man got deceived. And ever since that time, God has been, the whole Bible is God's pursuit of mankind. And so God sent His only Son, Jesus, to reconcile that, to become sin so that we could become children of God. And that is our new name. We are children of God, We don't operate out of achieving identity. So often we think identity should be achieved. It's what we do. It's how we work. If I go and feed the poor, if I go and do really well, then that makes me a better person. That gives me a new name. But your identity is not achieved, it is received. And I think that's something, if we can start to think about how this affects everything we do, and we realize that actually it's a gift. All we have to do is receive it, not achieve it. We're going to start to think differently. I talked from Peter's life on how in his biggest moment of shame, his moment when he denied Jesus, when he was there and God said, hey, Peter, you're gonna mess up really bad. And he goes, no way. I mean, have you seen how much I love you? There's no way. God asked him 3 times about his love in the previous story. And then he said, you know what? But you're going to deny me 3 times. And he goes, no, I'm not. And he goes, before the rooster crows, you will deny me. And he was in that moment, the rooster crows. He was asking, people were asking him, are you with Jesus? Jesus was about to be put on the cross. Are you with Jesus? Are you with Jesus? And it says he cursed out loud and he said, no, I'm not. Leave me alone. He said it 3 times, the rooster crowed. And so many of us, we hear the name. God changed his name from Simon to Peter. And he said, you know what? I'm giving you a new name, and on you I will build my church. God gives us a new name. And then we have temptation, and then we have struggles, and then we have shame. And then we hear the rooster crow. We like Peter, we're in that moment where we know, hang on, I've really messed up. That rooster, the enemy, will remind you of your shame, and he'll try and keep you there. And one of my favorite stories in the Bible where Jesus looked at Peter, it says Jesus looked straight at Peter when the rooster crowed. And he looked at him with the eyes of compassion and the eyes of, reminding him who he really was. And he said, remember, Peter, on you I'm building my church. You are that rock. Just in one look, he reminded him of who he was. And I think so often in life, when we're in our worst, when we're at our worst, we think there's no way God can love me. If you know what I've done, if you know what I'm living in, if you know where I've been, if you know what's done to me, there's no way I can live right with God. And God looks at you in those moments and he says, you are mine. I've given you a new name and you're a child of God. You're going to function like a child of God. You're no longer living under striving or resignation. You're living as a child of God. And in that moment, it said Peter wept bitterly. And God it's like a call. He's calling us back to him. And, I kind of said, this week I'm going to touch on what does it mean when we know who we are? We're made in the image of God. And so when we know who we are, then we can follow his commands. We can follow his ways. And normally when you begin to realize who you are in God, it is actually an overflow that you do what you do. And so I'm going to just share really briefly from a passage in John. I'm going to call this a new living. Before I just speak from this passage, I'm just going to pray. God, I thank you that you make us whole. That we don't deserve it, but you make us worthy. And I pray that your word would speak, that I would not stand in the way of what you're about to do. God, we open our heart out to you. Say, God, do your thing. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm going to talk about a different kind of living when you know who you are. If we know him, we know us. And if we know us, then we begin to show him. And that should be just such a natural progression. When people look at us, they should know Jesus. So Jesus' identity, I don't know if you've read your Bible before, or if you're new here, or I would really encourage you to pursue the life of Jesus. Jesus, out of his identity, he was always displaying love through giving. Every time Jesus realized his Father who had sent him, who he was, it talks in Scripture repeatedly. He began to do something as a demonstration of the love of God. He began to do something. Love does. Love does. There's this scripture in John 13, verses 3 to 5. Just stay with me. Turn to someone and say, it's going somewhere. If they're asleep, give them a whack, saying it's going somewhere. Okay. Do we have that up? All right. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God, and that he was returning to God. But this word so is actually really key. Even conjunctions in the Bible can emphasize a lot. After Jesus knowing who he is, so he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin, began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. There's a quote in this book called Love Does by Bob Goff. We actually met him in the US this time. Phenomenal guy, has work out in Africa amongst the children. And he says this is what love does. It pursues blindly, unflinchingly, and without end. When you go after something you love, you'll do anything it takes to get it, even if it costs everything. And this is Jesus. Now I want to talk about just 4 points, because I'm going to rush through these points. We're nearly out of time. But I want to bring out, through this simple passage, 4 points. That his identity led him to serve in spite of these 4 points. Number 1, what he faced. Do you know that Jesus was just about to be hung on a cross for something he didn't do? Jesus was about to be betrayed by people that said they loved him. Jesus was about to be shamed and condemned in public for for crimes he didn't commit. He was there in that hour knowing everything. He was there probably pacing around, probably resting, probably in just before he said, Father, if this is your will, take this cup away from me. He's in this moment of real realization. And in that moment, he's thinking about his disciples. It said, it was just before the Passover festival. He knew the hour had come, and he was to leave this world and go to the Father. And then it said, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. These 2 sentences, imagine having the thought of, I'm about to die, but I love these guys. And what did he do? It doesn't matter what your circumstances. It doesn't matter how tough it is. It doesn't matter how broke you are. The servant heart will always find a way to let love express itself. So often we think, you know what? I'm in the worst situation. You don't know what I've been through. I'm such a sinner. There's no way I can go and serve someone. I have nothing to give. I have no money. I have no compassion. I've reached the end of myself. I don't even have hope. I don't even have a will. And, you may think that this situation that you're in is impossible to see people the way Jesus sees it. But Jesus is facing death. Can you imagine being betrayed? He was sitting with his disciples, which goes into my next point, is in spite of who they were around him. It said the evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. He was amongst his betrayers, people that said they loved him. He was amongst those people. Doesn't matter who people are around you, people that have really mistreated you, people that, serving doesn't come so easy. We can get really super spiritual about this and think, oh, yeah, maybe I should go out to people that, people that are not like me. Maybe I should start with the poor. And that's awesome if that's something that you're not used to. But what about the person in church that you ignore? Or what about that neighbor that when the neighbor walks one way, you run the other? What about your own parents that you've probably not talked to in a long time? What about those parents that have really hurt you? What about those relationships that have not turned out? What about those people that betray you? In those moments, Jesus found an opportunity to serve. This is my favorite because I think this point, it shows the humility of this servant king. It says, the third point, it didn't matter who he was. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power. Can you imagine being the most powerful man on earth? Where God is saying to you, everything on earth and in heaven, all the powers, all the welfare, everything that you see is yours. What would you do with that moment? I would probably get really proud. I would probably think of how great of a person I am to build this empire and, to start to gain my identity from it. I would probably think of ways that I can use people or, utilize the money or look at people as objects of, how I can manipulate them now that I'm the most. Remember the ones that hurt me? I'm going to get them first. Remember the ones that, when I didn't have anything, they came to me and I was in need and they didn't really meet my need? Now we'll see. Those moments. God said, everything, Jesus, is yours. This is huge because it said he had come from God. He was going to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing. Sometimes we also think that because of who we are, here Jesus was given all power and authority. Sometimes we think because of who we're not, it disqualifies us. It's not just who you are that can get to your head, but sometimes it's who you're not. The other day, Elijah and I were dinner meal time. Dad wasn't at home. We were talking. I don't know how we came up to this topic about looking after me when I'm old. And I said, Elijah, will you look after me when I'm old and maybe sick and frail and he's 6. So I'm thinking he's going to give this superhero, analogy. And he goes, of course, Mom. And I'm like, how will you do that? I'm going to marry an extraordinary wife. And I'm like, Elijah, you're going to marry an extraordinary wife? How are you going to do that? What is extraordinary? I don't know if he knew what he was saying. But he said, of course I'll marry an extraordinary wife because I'm an extraordinary boy. And I thought in that moment, the first thing when Ryan came home, I'm like, do you know what Elijah just said? He knows what he's worth. Because he knows what he's worth, he knows what he can get. And because he knows what he can get, he knows what he can do. He's a true child of God. And in life, when we're faced with some really hard times, if you know that your sons and daughters, your princes and princesses of the Most High God, you can do anything. Not because you deserve it, but because you're worth it. He made you worthy. So next time when you're in a place of shame and you're thinking, you know what, who am I to actually serve? Who am I to lift myself and serve those people? Who am I to actually go and speak to them? Maybe all they need is a hug, like Himani said. Sometimes we can get so self-absorbed that we forget that in the giving is the living. We're so introverted that we think, I feel so low today. So based on my feelings, I'm just going to pull back and feel sorry about myself. And so many times, depression and sorrow and loneliness is just a result of selfishness. Because if we realize that, you know what, I'm not here for me. I'm not living here for myself. Jesus didn't. So what gives us an excuse that we can live for ourselves if we have the living God that lives inside of us, that we're created in His image, that if He's thinking of others all the time, we can be thinking of others all the time. What gives us the right to sit at home and give up? When we do that, in those moments, we nullify what Jesus did on the cross. We actually say, God, what you did on the cross was not enough for what I'm going through right now. And I love it because Jesus knew who He was, but He didn't use that to be proud. He used that to go low. He used that to be humble. He used that to look at somebody and say, I know what you need right now, and I'm going to meet that. Which goes to my last point, is His identity led Him to serve in spite of what the need was. At that time what the need was? The disciples walked in after a long journey, walking without closed shoes, walking in sandals. They came inside, they're about to eat their meal, and normally you have a customary practice where not even a Jewish servant washed feet. They used to use Gentile men to wash feet. And Jesus is like, with the power and the authority that you have given me, I'm going to take this and wash your feet. Their feet needed washing. Their lives needed washing. Our neighbor probably needs some engagement right now of us getting our hands dirty, of us going to someone and say, hey, what do you need? Not what I think you need, because it's easy for us, if someone's asking for food, we give them a track and say, here's the deeper meaning to life. They're not going to listen to you if you first don't address their need. And so much of the time we think we know how to love people. I'm going to love them because I think this is noble. They may not need your nobility. They may just need your presence. Sometimes we think that in loving people the way we love, that's enough. But that's not what Jesus did. He got down. He took off his outer garment. He got down and he washed in between their toes. He washed the dirt off their feet. That is our servant king. That is the God who made us. That is the God who gives us identity. That is the God who says, I loved first so you can love. That is the God who says, love God and love your enemies. And sometimes, what it means to wash people's feet is probably talking about loving your enemies in a way that they need loving. Loving your enemies is not always something that you see as a visual enemy that is quite obvious. It might mean an enemy that doesn't agree with you in that situation. An enemy that maybe just didn't grow up like you. An enemy in your mind that you've just built walls of judgment because you think they're not good enough for. Who are they to judge me? And so you've built up these enemies in your life and you say, you know what, God says to love me, I'll love them from a distance. And maybe today God's touching some people's hearts here and showing them who they really are. God doesn't convict you to condemn you. He doesn't convict you of your sin. He convicts you of your righteousness. When people say like, how do I know what the difference is between Satan's condemnation and God's conviction? Is that God will always remind you of who you are, not who you're not. Satan will always remind you of who you're not. And he'll say, you stay there. That's who you are. That's who you are. God says, you know what? That's who you're not. Come on. This is who you are. This is who you are. Look in the mirror. See me. See the completion of who you are. And now start to act like who you are. God gave us our image before he gave us a command. So often we use our command to get our image. So often, even in church, we can get caught up doing church that we forget the one that actually commissioned us. We're so often after the works of his hand, of what he can provide, that we forget his face. And I just think this story, before he went to the cross, as if going to the cross was not enough, he does this. And in John chapter 13, Rochelle, if you have the other scripture, I'm going to close in a few moments, and it says, verse 13, you call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so. That is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. Now that you know, you know why he's so sure that you're going to know these things? Because he's displayed to you what love looks like. And when you get your identity from the love of God, you know these things. You know these things, and you will be blessed if you do them. You will be blessed if you do them. I read this analogy a while ago about this whole thing about how we know what it's like to love people based out of our own insecurities. This really, hit home with me, because we think sometimes that out of our own insecurity, if we serve people out of that insecurity, that it's just like loving people. I'll give you an example. You're walking in the garden, you're really hungry. You've not eaten for 2 days, or maybe you've just come out of the big boss house and you've not been able to eat different kinds of fruits. You're starved, and you're walking in the most beautiful garden that God has ever made. Just think about that picture for a moment. You're hungry, but you're walking in the most beautiful garden. Stuff that has probably gone old over the years. Cobwebs and dust and, all sorts of grimy things on it. But it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And you're hungry. You're walking in this garden, and all you see are the fruit. Because all you're thinking of is how can I serve my starvation? All you're thinking of is, I'm just hungry, so I need to eat. And you walk in this garden and you just start stuffing yourself. You reach the end of the garden. You've missed the point of the whole walk. All you did was feed your hunger. What God was asking you to do is look up and see the beauty behind that. Take those cobwebs off. Get your hands dirty. Maybe today you need to go to some people that you've ignored, that you fought with, that have left scars that you shouldn't have ever had to bear, that have left memories that still rattle in your brain every day. Maybe those people. I know sometimes loving people actually means just forgiving them, because you probably can't be in proximity with them, maybe. But you'll know that God will speak to your heart. If those people are people you can actually reach out, not from the scars that they've left, but from the beauty of who they are. Maybe some of you here need to reconcile with each other, with your family. Maybe some of you over the years have just built walls of hurt because they didn't act like a certain way. Or maybe they didn't give you what you needed. So you've just shut down. God's here and He's showing you how to love. breaking those walls down. He's showing you that it's more than the fruit. Look at the beauty behind the scars. Look at the beauty behind the dirt. Go wash their feet. Engage. Don't love from a distance. Jesus loved his disciples. He was with them. He was present. He touched them. He ate with them. He spoke words of life. Maybe some of you just need to speak words of life over someone that you've hated all your life. Maybe some of you have just given up on that relationship that, maybe your parents or your brother and sister, or you've said, you know what, they've hurt me so much that I can actually sit back in justification that it is okay. Today, God's asking you to love like him. And when you know who you are a child of God, so you can love people where they're at. When you find who you are in God, you will always find a way to give love and expression. Jesus never asked us to do anything he didn't do first. Nothing. You never have to do anything in your own strength. It cannot overwhelm you because you just have to believe and trust in him. When just before his crucifixion, Pilate, the Roman ruler, said, people brought Jesus to him and said, you need to crucify this man. He knew because his wife had a dream that this man is innocent a few days ago, and he was torn between the revelation his wife had and what the people wanted. And so every year they had the opportunity to release one prisoner. And so here Pilate's thinking, I'm going to paint this amazing picture for Jesus so that he can be released. And so he's like, hey guys, it's that time where we can get to release a prisoner. And since they've asked this man to be arrested, I'm sure, there's him or there's Barabbas. Barabbas was a murderer. He was a robber. He was a thief. He probably went around ruining homes. Can you imagine if you were the mother in that crowd and you had just killed your son? He was that guy. So Pilate's here thinking that if I put him next to Jesus, they're surely going to release Jesus. So he thought he'll get out of that. And then he said, who do you want to release? And they said to him, Barabbas. Barabbas stands for everything that we hate, that we wish we didn't do. The sins that we commit that we wish we could wipe out. We don't realize that Jesus actually wiped it out for us. So we are that Barabbas. You know what? They released Barabbas. And Pilate said, what fault has this man done? He's healed your mom from that issue of blood for her whole life. He healed you from blindness, that people cursed you and said it was your sin. He raised your brother from the dead. He healed you 10, all the lepers. He gave you a new life. What wrong has this man done? And they shouted, crucify him. This is our Jesus. He took our place. We are Barabbas. So that we could take his place. That's our motivation. It's not to gain our identity. It's not to be big people. We don't need money to be big people. We are big people because we have Jesus. We don't need success and fame and relationships and marriage, and all those things are good things. But if they replace God in our lives, we don't need them. If that thing doesn't serve you to serve others, get rid of it. You need to use that very thing, the talent that you have, the destiny that God's given you, the dream that God's placed in your heart. If it does not serve others, it's not worth it. If it brings an end to yourself and all you're thinking of is how you can do this and how you can do that and how you can make your name great, it's not operating out of the love that He gave, because He took our place. Barabbas didn't go because the people wanted him to go. Barabbas was released because Jesus took his place. Because Jesus could have done anything. He was God. He could have called down fire. He could have ascended to heaven. But He took your place so that you could take His. And God, I just thank You that we don't serve because we have to. We serve because we get to. We serve because it is a privilege. It's not our identity. You have an order, Jesus. You have an order of naming us and giving us purpose. Our name is Your child. And our purpose is to love and serve people. And God, I pray, I stand here as the chief repenter and just say, I'm sorry, God, when I've put me first, when it's all been about me and I've lost who I am as a daughter of God, when I've been insecure and I've been ashamed, when I've lived from a place of compromise, when I've lived from a place of approval, from a place of rejection. God, forgive me. And remind me in my moments of the rooster crowing who I am as a daughter of the Most High God. That when I stand here and declare what You have done, I don't take pride in who I am, but in who You've made me. And God, as a community, I just pray that we would understand that the giving is our living. Thank You, Jesus. It's going to end with this, and I'm just going to pray for people here to have that opportunity also to just ask Jesus to show you who He is. You know, there's this, Johnny actually sent me these videos through the week, and I didn't get a chance to view all of them, but I saw one and I just loved what he said. This guy called Tony Robbins, he's a motivational speaker. And I read this and I was like, wow, that's Jesus. That's what He can do in us. When you give back to other people and your community, it reminds you what you're made for. Focusing on the needs of others has a way of motivating you to do more than you thought possible. You feel the benefits immediately. You become more productive. You find creative solutions to problems. You find strength when you're exhausted. That's because life supports that which improves the quality of life. Life supports which improves the quality of life. When we contribute to our community, we become part of something bigger than ourselves. Guys, what do you have right now that you can give? What do you have right now that you can give God? God can take the sin in your life. When you submit it to God, He can make it your biggest ministry. the thing that you struggle with all your life, He can use you to minister to others in that very same struggle. Anything in the hand of God changes. It's my little girl. Can we all stand? I just want to close with this invitation. But first, this question. What legacy of giving are you going to leave behind? Not what level of success are you going to leave behind, because that'll end with you. You can't take success to heaven. You can't take money to heaven. You can't take your house to heaven. Although those things are good things. We need those things. But what's something you can leave behind that when you're here no more, it still continues? Guys, as a church, to be significant, we need to be thinking these things. Just get your eyes off yourself and allow Jesus to look at you, because when He looks at you, you can look at others. So let's just close our eyes, not in any weird way, but just to reflect. Whatever way you reflect, if you want to kneel down, if you want to put your hands up, you want to close your eyes. And if you're here and you're saying, this God sounds too good. He sounds too amazing. This cannot be true. Where is the catch? What do I need to do? God's saying you just need to believe. And today we're going to throw open this invitation. If you have not put your faith in this God that can change your destiny, I'm going to say a prayer and you can repeat it after me. And if you want to meet me or Ryan or Clinton or Johnny or Shakes, just come up and talk to us after. And just let me know that this is the first step you've taken into knowing who you are and letting God give you a new name. So, Jesus, we come to you as sinners saved by grace. That in our weakness, you are made strong. We are sorry for the sin, for the shame, for the neglect that we've put you through and we've put us through. And we know that you are the Son of God and that you redeemed us. You took my sin so I could take your glory. We put our faith in you. In Jesus' name.